British East India Company, who first arrived in India in the 17th century, gradually expanded into the region by conquest and through alliances. So much so that by the mid-19th century, they directly ruled over a lot of India while the rest, the princely states, fell under their control. To maintain control, they created an army of mainly Indians for each of their 3 presidencies. These were the Sepoys. Although the Madras and Bombay army recruited all castes, the Bengal army was mainly composed of high caste Hindus and wealthy Muslims. This arrangement initially worked well, but by the mid-19th century the company's policies in India angered many of the wealthy troops in the Bengal army. For instance, adopted sons could now no longer inherit the noble titles. Instead, through this, the doctrine of lapse, states like Oudh were annexed by the East India Company. Plus, many were angered when the company redistributed land to the peasants in a series of reforms. They also received no extra pay for serving in states like Punjab after they were annexed, and they risked losing their caste if they were sent overseas. Finally, many were also worried about the loss of traditional practices. For instance, the British banned sati, where a widow was killed or committed suicide when her husband died, and missionaries converted many Hindus and Muslims. This problem in fact predated the Sepoy Mutiny by 50 years. In Vellore in the south in 1806 there was a small mutiny when beards and religious markings on the face were banned. So tensions were already high, but they got worse when, in early 1857, there was a rumour that the ammunition for the new Enfield rifle came from cartridges greased with tallow, pig and cow fat. Because the soldiers would have to bite the cartridges to load them, Hindus and Muslims would be going against their religious beliefs. The British tried to quell the rumours and some regiments even modified their drills, but it did little to ease the tensions. Finally, in March 1857, a soldier named Mangal Pandey killed his sergeant major and shot at his adjutant. Only one Indian soldier stepped forward to stop him. Pandey was later declared to be in drug-fueled frenzy and quickly hung. This caused the trouble to spread. In Meerut in early May, soldiers of the Bengal army refused to do firing drills and were sentenced to 10 years imprisonment and hard labour. But the next day, angered by the arrests, their fellow soldiers rose up in mutiny, attacked the British and freed them. From there, the thousands of soldiers marched from Meerut to Delhi, where the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II lived but had little authority. As they arrived, more soldiers mutinied and proclaimed Bahadur Shah the Emperor of India. This encouraged people all over India to join the cause, notably in Lucknow, which the rebels lay siege to in May, Kanpur, which fell in June, and Jhansi. But when capturing Kanpur, the mutineers massacred over 100 women and children. However, the British disbanded most of the regiments of the Bengal army before they had time to mutiny. Plus, the rebels were disjointed and the majority of India refused to join them. So, although the British were initially slow to move, they received reinforcements from the Crimean War and others who were on their way to fight the Chinese, and lay siege to Delhi in June. They fought back a Sepoy counterattack in Agra in August, and then, after bombardment and assault, they captured Delhi in September and exiled the Mughal emperor. But elsewhere, the relatively undefended city of Lucknow fell to the Sepoys in November, just after a British relief column was able to evacuate most of the British civilians. However, this did little to help the rebellion gain momentum, and the British marched on Kanpur the same month. Then, the British, although slightly outnumbered, crushed the Sepoys in early December in battle and recaptured the city. The leader of the rebellion in Kanpur, Nana Hasib, the adopted son of a Maratha aristocrat, then disappeared. The British then began their slow march on Lucknow. The rebel leader in the city, Begum Hazrat Mahal, who initially rebelled because her family lost their titles when the British annexed Oudh, soon fled the city in March 1858. This allowed the British and their Nepalese allies to recapture the city, but many rebels escaped and joined the last leader of the rebellion, Rani of Jhansi, who had also lost titles due to the doctrine of lapse. By early 1858 in central India, the Rani had actually managed to expand out and take cities like Gwalior, but she lacked popular support. So Jhansi and Kalpi quickly fell to the advancing British, and the Rani herself died in June when Gwalior was recaptured. Although some continued to fight for a few more months, this effectively ended the mutiny. The massacres during which outraged the British public, and the subsequent reprisals were brutal. Plus, the British government took over control of India from the East India Company and introduced a series of reforms. For instance, the army began to recruit from those who remained loyal to them, like the Sikhs and the Nepalese. And the government stopped land grabs and began to westernize the region, which created a new middle class.